Congressman, specifically on the economy. They told us 3 years ago we weren't in a recession. Then 2 years later, they admitted we've been in one for over a year. Now they said a year ago, green shoots. Now they're saying again, the economy's wonderful. We've turned the corner when every major indicator of joblessness and you name it is getting worse and worse. Anybody on Main Street knows we're in trouble. Maybe it's good for bankers getting billion-dollar bonuses. What do you, as an economist, as a doctor, as a congressman, what do you see happening? What is the data you're seeing? Is this just more political hype to stall the imploding poll numbers of Barack Obama?
Yeah, I think so. And the one group that is doing quite well is that Goldman Sachs group. I mean, their business is booming and their profits are booming, and they've lived off the government. But no, I think you'll see little blips upward, and maybe they announce on the news it's all propaganda. Well, housing is doing so much better because it didn't go down quite as quickly as last month. Instead of losing 700,000 jobs last month, we lost 500,000 jobs, and you're supposed to feel good. So it's a lot of propaganda. They first want you to be very fearful and get you to go along with what they want to do, and then they turn around and they want to convince you they're doing such a grand job, and they'll tell you everything is wonderful. But there's a limit to how long they can fool the people. You know, if you've been out of work and you don't have enough money to feed your kids, and you listen to this, you just don't buy into this stuff. So I've always argued that the people are generally 10 to 15 years ahead of Congress, whether it has to do with foreign policy or the drug war, or now even on some of these things that they're complaining about now. And that's why these events are very important, to get the attention of the members of Congress, because ultimately they like their job, and if they know there's enough people out there, they're gonna pay attention, and they'll change their voting.
Well, Congressman, when we look at what the Federal Reserve and others are doing, you on this show before have said we should have grand juries and others look at criminal activity. I mean, what about Goldman Sachs? I mean, it's most of the financial team Obama has. It's clearly a conflict of interest. And when Bernanke and Paulson and others and Geithner get asked about it by you and others, they just laugh at you, basically. I mean, can you lay out a plan or put the bug in people's ear of who should go for a criminal investigation of this?
Well, I can't list names, but it should be looked at, and that's one advantage that we'd have if we were actually allowed to look at these books and find out what kind of deals the Federal Reserve makes. But, it's a little bit more than Bernanke shaking hands with somebody and say, well, we're going to send you over $10 billion to tide you over. It's the immorality of the system, the violation of the Constitution, the idea that you can print money, the idea that gold is evil and that deficits don't matter. It's this philosophic argument that is so crucial, and we've suffered from it. Both left and right have argued the case. You have big government conservatives and big government liberals. It's not like the conservative Republicans are for small government. You know that they're not, but this is what we have to address, the immorality of the system. And somebody said, well, you know what, if we could just put Bernanke and a few people in the administration in prison, this would solve it. But really, the Congress is complicit in all this. I mean,
well, I agree. I mean, they asked the Fed to control interest rates and all those points you've made, but the issue here is if we arrest these people for their crimes, that illustrates and breaks their back right there to put in a constitutional system. So I'm just saying skip all the middle phases and go right to arresting the crooks. I mean, you have this special interest group of bankers who are above the law and can steal trillions of dollars, $23.7 trillion, and none of us dare.
Well, I don't quite have enough information to tell you who's going to get arrested or should be arrested and who's going to do the arresting,
But your audit goes a long way towards beginning that process.
That is the purpose, is to find out the information, because I've argued that, I don't talk about control of monetary policy. I don't talk about a new monetary system. I'm talking about transparency and opening up the books and then going from there. People are upset and angry, and they know. And if these books get open about the time we have prices going up, that will be the inflation tax. People, they're getting hit, but not as bad as if you have a CPI going up for 10, 15, 20%. That's when the people are really going to be upset because they've lost a lot already. People lost a lot in the value of their homes and their stocks. But what happens if they lose the value of the purchasing power of their weekly paycheck or Social Security beneficiaries? And that is going to be a big event, and that is something, no matter what the government does, they can't take care of it, because the more they go into deficit financing, once the psychology shifts, it's amazing that we doubled the money supply and you didn't have a tremendous shift in psychology. Gold holds its own and it does go up, but there will be a point when the psychology shifts and they say, well, we need to help the elderly and the unemployed, so we're going to double their their check because they can't live on what they're getting. That psychology then is going to be the panic.
And then the inflation.
You don't know what will happen to your currency. That's
what happens. It could happen overnight. Quickly now, in the time we've got left, a question. Does Dr. Paul foresee a default on U.S. debt, a bank holiday, and a quick devaluation of the UDS, much like happened in Argentina in early 2000? We already see they're having to monetize quite a lot of the debt, the government buying its own debt.
Well, I don't think it's going to be one of these things. In the old days, they had deliberate announcements and devaluations. The dollar's being devalued every single day. So that's going to happen. But there will be a time when the psychology changes, when it will turn into a rout, and that's what they can't control. And, of course, if they're in the control of the government and the power and the army and everything else, then they end up picking up all the pieces. But I don't think there'll be a bank holiday. I mean, that would help cause the panic that people then would really run out of the currency. So they're not going to close down the banks. They're going to keep the presses running. They don't default by not paying the bills. They're always going to pay Social Security. They're always going to pay.
They default by inflating. They default by.
If they can inflate 50%, they've just defaulted on half of the debt, and that's
okay,
what
Congressman.
Liquidate that.
In the limited time, more and more, it looks to me like Obama's going to be a one-term president. I mean, he's got a record drop in polls for a president 7 months into office. Your take on Obama's political fortunes? He promised the moon. He's delivering none of it. What do you see happening?
I don't think he'll be reelected, but I think it's way too early to know that for sure. But his circumstances are much more difficult. And I often thought about this early on, whether he would be like Roosevelt and never get blamed for anything. Roosevelt got more popular and kept getting reelected in spite of the fact that he really prolonged the Depression.
Yeah, I don't think he's following the Roosevelt pattern, do you?
Yeah, no, I think you're right on that. I think Obama is going to receive some of the blame, and rightfully so. Not that he created the monster. You know, the monster was there already.
But he certainly works for the same people. Congressman, next, 2012, it's a lot closer than it was. We're talking 2 years away from the campaign starting up. Ron Paul going to be running for president 2012?
Which country?
The United States. You know you have to run to educate people again, and now they're really going to be listening to you. Ron Paul, you running for 2012?
I have no plans for that. I wouldn't be able to make a decision on that today. I mean, that's a long way off.
But we know you're going to do it, and I'll be supporting you.
Yeah.
Hey, what about your son? Another chip off the old block, medical doctor Rand Paul. Looks like he can win in Kentucky. Looks like he's going to be running.
It sure does. He's up making some announcements today and tomorrow, so I think it's going to be explicit. His one contention was he didn't want to take on an incumbent, Bunning. Bunning is not the most popular guy, but he did do a pretty good job on the Federal Reserve and some other issues, and he didn't want to run against him. He didn't think it was smart, but Bunning is out, and now the big question is can Rand compete, with Grayson, who's the establishment candidate, and that'll be a test on our supporters around the country, whether or not they'll send them enough money to run a good race.
And fire out the Campaign for Liberty, Rand's site. Give us some of the sites, Doctor, we should visit.
Well, Campaign for Liberty is our main site, and that's one to go. And I don't know precisely, but I'm sure Rand Paul for the Senate would find you something for his website. But we would welcome any support we can get.
Absolutely. We were going to have him back on in the next few days and again next week. And we've got his site up on screen. Also, campaignforliberty.com is up on screen. The barbecue is coming up in Texas. Find out more at Campaign for Liberty on that. In closing...
okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead about the barbecue.
No, that would have to be Ron Paul for Congress, re-elect for Congress, because Campaign for Liberty, this is going to be a political event, and we're hoping to have a real nice event because it is in the district, and it's in Galveston, and they got slaughtered, with the hurricane. So we're trying to, perk the business community up a little bit there.
In closing, we got about 45 seconds. Holdren's book calling for putting sterilants in the water, having the CPS take all children at birth, and just total scientific dictatorship. Does it concern you that the White House science czar wrote a textbook on how to carry out world government?
Sure it does, but that stuff's been around. I'm just glad people are bringing it to the surface.
Would you call for an investigation into Holdren for these ideas?
I would call for an investigation of the whole government all the time because there's too much government. It's too secret. So the more we find out about any of their shenanigans, the better.
Congressman Ron Paul, have a great recess. God bless you.
Very good. Thanks.
Thank you so much. We'll be right back.